After 40 years of hunting criminals through paper trails and encrypted accounts, I thought I'd finally earned the right to disappear, not into darkness, but into the thin mountain air of Aspen, where my late wife Sarah and I had spent 3 years designing every detail of our dream lodge, the place we called Eagle's Rest. She passed 8 months before we could move in together, her heart giving out on a Tuesday morning while I was making her coffee. The stroke was sudden, merciless, so I finished building it alone, every nail and beam a promise to her memory. The lodge sat at 9,200 feet, wrapped in pine and silence. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the maroon bells like a painting that changed with every hour of sunlight. It wasn't just expensive, it was sacred. $2.8 million of our life savings, poured into 6 bedrooms, a great room with a stone fireplace you could walk into, and a deck that seemed to float above the valley. This was where I was supposed to heal, where I was supposed to remember Sarah's laugh without the weight of grief crushing my chest. I'd been there alone for 3 weeks when my phone shattered the morning quiet. The name on the screen made my jaw tighten. Marcus Webb, my stepson, or more accurately, Sarah's son from her first marriage, a man I'd spent 15 years trying to understand and 5 years trying to avoid. He was 38 years old and hadn't held a real job since he convinced his mother to bankroll his first business venture at 23. Sarah had loved him with the fierce, blind devotion only a mother could maintain. I had loved Sarah, so I tolerated him. Barely. I answered on the 3rd ring. Marcus, Tom. Finally, caught you. Listen. Incredible news. His voice had that manufactured enthusiasm I recognized from his social media videos. The ones where he shouted about mindset and manifestation to teenagers with credit cards. I heard you finally finished the lodge. Sarah would be so proud, man. So proud. The casual use of her name in his sales pitch made something cold settle in my stomach. What do you want, Marcus? Want? I don't want anything. I'm calling to help you, actually. See, I'm running this executive mastermind intensive next month, and the venue I had lined up just fell through. Total disaster. But then I thought, wait, Tom's got that massive place in Aspen now. Problem solved. I set down my coffee cup very carefully. I'm not following. The lodge, Tom. We need it for 2 weeks. There'll be 25 of us. All high-level entrepreneurs. C-suite types. You know, we'll be doing breakthrough sessions, meditation, some team building. It's a $25,000 per person program, so these folks expect 5-star everything. I'll need you to handle the catering, obviously. Maybe hire some staff. Oh, and we'll need full access for filming. I'm documenting the whole thing for a documentary. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. 25 people. 2 weeks. In the home I'd built as a shrine to my wife's memory, Marcus, I said slowly. You're asking to take over my house for 2 weeks with 25 strangers, and you want me to cater to them? Not asking, Tom. Confirming. Linda already said you'd be cool with it. We're loading up the vans now. Should be there by 6 tonight. Text me the gate code. Yeah? And hey, make sure you pick up some of that fancy coffee. These people are used to quality. Linda. My daughter. My biological daughter, who I'd raised from diapers, who knew exactly what this lodge meant to me. The betrayal was a knife, but I couldn't process it yet. Not while Marcus was still talking. We're leaving in 20 minutes, he continued. So I need that gate code as soon as possible. Also, the master suite. I'm taking that one. Best view, right? The rest of the crew can figure out the other rooms. This is going to be epic, Tom. Epic. Sarah's looking down, smiling right now. I can feel it. And then, he hung up. I stood in my kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the silence that rushed back in. Through the window, a hawk circled against the blue sky. Hunting. I watched it for a long moment. Then I walked to my office, the room Sarah had insisted I needed, even in retirement. You'll get bored, she'd said. You'll need a project. She was right. I opened my laptop and began to type. The first email went to my former colleague at the FBI, a woman named Patricia Chen who now ran financial crimes investigations in Denver. The subject line was simple: consulting request. Urgent. The second email went to my lawyer, a sharp woman named Rebecca Torres, who'd handled Sarah's estate. Need full property rights documentation and Colorado trespass law summary. Immediate. I didn't send them yet. First, I needed to make a phone call. I pulled up Marcus's social media profile on my phone. His latest post showed him standing in front of a rented Lamborghini, arms spread wide. The caption reading, "Success isn't given, it's taken. Join my mastermind and learn how I built a 7-figure empire from nothing. Limited spots. Link in bio. 7 figures. From nothing." I'd seen his tax returns when Sarah was alive. She'd asked me to help him with some paperwork. The returns showed income of $48,000 last year. Before deductions, I made a mental note and kept scrolling. His website advertised the Marcus Webb Executive Transformation Experience. $25,000 for 2 weeks of intensive personal breakthrough coaching and network building with industry titans. The photos showed luxurious mountain venues, private chefs, helicopter excursions. I looked at my lodge through the window. I understood now. I wasn't offering my home. I was the venue he'd been planning to use all along, the free venue. The venue that would let him pocket an extra $500,000 while convincing his clients they were getting exclusivity they weren't paying for. But that was just theft of services. I knew Marcus. There was always more. I pulled up his business registration. Web Transformation Enterprises, LLC. Registered in Delaware. Delaware, where you could hide ownership. I pulled up his corporate filings. No employees. No office. Just a registered agent and a P.O. box. I opened a fresh document and started a timeline. Not because I was angry. Anger was wasteful. I started the timeline because I was a hunter, and I'd just caught the scent. My phone buzzed. A text from Linda. "Dad, please don't be mad. Marcus really needs this. It's important for his business. Mom would have wanted you to help him." The invocation of Sarah's wishes felt like desecration, but I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I walked through my home, this place I'd built, with Sarah's dreams in every corner. I touched the river stones we'd picked for the fireplace surround. I looked at the custom woodwork she'd sketched on napkins. I stood in the master bedroom where I'd imagined us growing old together. Then I began to prepare. The convoy arrived at 6:47 p.m., 47 minutes late. Not one vehicle, but 6. 2 luxury Sprinter vans, 3 SUVs, and Marcus's personal vehicle, a white Range Rover with custom rims that cost more than most people's cars. They came up my private drive like an invading army, their headlights cutting through the dusk, their music thumping bass lines that echoed off the mountains. I watched from the great room window, a glass of water in my hand. I'd changed into comfortable clothes, jeans, and a flannel shirt. I looked like exactly what Marcus expected, a retired old man, soft and manageable. The doors opened and they spilled out into the mountain air. Young, mostly. Mid-20s to mid-40s. The men wore expensive athleisure and designer sunglasses despite the fading light. The women carried purses that cost what I used to make in a month as a GS-13. They looked around with the casual entitlement of people who believed luxury was their birthright. Marcus emerged last, king of his domain. He'd gained weight since I'd last seen him at Sarah's funeral. His face fuller, his movements slower. He wore a black tactical vest over a compression shirt, cargo pants, and boots that had never seen a hiking trail. He spread his arms wide and shouted, "Welcome to paradise, team. This is where transformation happens." A cheer went up. Someone started filming on their phone immediately. This wasn't a retreat. It was content creation. Marcus spotted me standing in the doorway and jogged over, his smile wide and empty. "Tom, you beautiful old man. You really came through." He grabbed me in a hug I didn't return. Up close, I could smell expensive cologne, failing to mask cheaper habits. Okay, so we're going to need all the bedrooms set up, fresh linens, towels, the works. And can you show us where you keep the good booze? We've got a welcome mixer starting in an hour. I looked at him. Then I looked past him, at the 24 other people, who were now treating my property like a resort they'd paid to visit. Which, I suppose, they had. Just not paid me. Of course, I said quietly. Let me help with the bags. Marcus laughed. Nah, man, we got it. You just focus on getting dinner ready. Nothing fancy. Steaks, maybe? Oh. And we're vegan-friendly. Paleo-friendly. Keto-friendly. Probably easier if you just make a bunch of options. He walked away before I could respond, already calling out instructions to his group. I watched them swarm through my home like locusts, their voices loud and careless, their hands touching everything. One woman, blonde and young enough to be Marcus's daughter, immediately claimed the master suite, dropping her designer luggage on Sarah's side of the bed. I said nothing. I walked through the chaos to my office and closed the door. The noise outside was muffled, but constant. I could hear their laughter, their music, the sound of my home being colonized. I opened my laptop. Both emails were still in my drafts folder. I hit send on both of them. Then I opened a new browser window and went to work. The first night was a study in disrespect. They found my wine cellar, the collection Sarah and I had built over 20 years of anniversaries and celebrations. By midnight, they'd emptied 14 bottles, including a 1,982 Bordeaux I'd been saving for our 40th anniversary. The corks were left on the counter. The bottles ended up in the regular trash, not even recycled. They commandeered the great room, pushing my furniture against the walls to create what Marcus called sacred circle space. His opening session was a loud, rambling speech about breaking free from limiting beliefs and becoming your authentic self. I watched from the kitchen while pretending to clean. His students sat in rapt attention, some of them crying, all of them filming. He never mentioned that this luxurious venue was free. He never mentioned that the owner was in the next room, or that said owner was his stepfather. He sold them the illusion of exclusivity while stealing from me and them simultaneously. Linda arrived late, slipping in through the back door. She found me in my office at 1 a.m. The house finally quiet. Her face was tight with guilt. Dad, I'm so sorry. He told me you'd agreed to this. He said you'd offered. I looked at my daughter. This woman I'd raised to value honesty, who'd somehow convinced herself that her half-brother's lies were acceptable. Did you really believe that? Linda, did you really think I'd volunteer to host 25 strangers in the house I built for your mother? Her eyes filled with tears. He's family, Dad. He's struggling. His business isn't doing well. And he needed this. I thought, maybe you could help him. Mom always helped him. Your mother enabled him. I said quietly. There's a difference, but that's not the point anymore. The point is he's here, and I'm going to let him stay. All 2 weeks. Linda looked confused. You are? I am. I turned back to my laptop, where financial records were spread across multiple windows. Go to bed, sweetheart. We'll talk more tomorrow. She hesitated at the door. Dad, what are you doing? I looked at her over my reading glasses. Research. I'm a researcher. It's what I do. The next morning, I played my role perfectly. I was up at 6, making coffee and breakfast for 26 people. I said nothing when they complained that the eggs were too runny or the coffee too strong. I simply remade everything to their specifications. I was the invisible servant, the background character in Marcus's production. While I cooked, I listened. That's the thing about entitled people. They don't think the help is paying attention. I heard Marcus on a phone call with his business partner, discussing how much they'd clear after expenses. I heard 2 students discussing the $15,000 they'd each paid for elite tier access. I heard a woman crying to her friend about maxing out her credit cards because Marcus had convinced her this program would 10x her income within 60 days. By noon, Patricia Chen had sent her response. It was a single line. Pulled. Preliminary records. Call me. I called her from my office. Door locked. Voice low. Tom, she said without preamble. Your stepson is running a textbook advance fee scheme, mixed with what looks like an unregistered securities offering. The mastermind program is just the visible layer. The real money is in what happens after. Is he pitching investments to these people? I don't know yet, I said. They just arrived. Well, watch for it. Because if he is, and if he's doing it across state lines, which he is based on his client list, that's wire fraud. Also, his LLC hasn't filed a tax return in 2 years, and there are 3 different business names he's operating under. None properly registered. This is a mess. Tom, a prosecutable mess. I felt that old familiar feeling, the one I used to get when a case was about to crack open. Keep digging, Patricia. I'll keep watching. Be careful, she warned. If he's desperate enough to con his own stepfather, he's desperate enough to be dangerous. I spent 40 years chasing dangerous men, I said. Marcus is just sloppy. That afternoon, while Marcus led his group on a Vision Quest hike, a gentle walk on a marked trail, I went through his room. Not illegal. This was my house, and he was an uninvited guest. I found his laptop in his luggage. Password protected but predictable. I'd taught Linda how to create strong passwords when she was 12. Marcus clearly hadn't received the same education. His password was Marcus W1, followed by his birth year. The laptop was a goldmine. Spreadsheets, tracking client payments, most made in cash or wire transfers to avoid paper trails. Email chains with his partner, a man named Derek Simmons, discussing how to structure their investment opportunities to avoid SEC scrutiny. Screenshots of fake testimonials, bought reviews, doctored bank statements showing wealth he didn't have. But the worst was a folder labeled Retreats. Inside were photos from previous events, all held at properties Marcus had clearly obtained the same way he'd obtained mine. A lake house in Minnesota, a beach house in Oregon, a ranch in Montana. In each photo, Marcus stood with his arms around smiling clients, selling the illusion of his success while stealing from the property owners. There was a subfolder labeled Future Properties. My lodge was listed there, with notes. Tom's Place. Mountain views. Can claim $50K venue value. Check for filming rights. Old man won't push back. Old man won't push back. I photographed everything with my phone, uploaded it to an encrypted cloud server, and closed the laptop exactly as I'd found it. Then I went to the kitchen and started preparing their dinner. Herb-crusted salmon with roasted vegetables. They'd requested it specifically. I made it perfectly. While they ate, Marcus made an announcement. Okay, Transformation Squad. Tonight, we're diving into the real work. We're going to talk about investments, about building generational wealth, about the opportunities that separate the dreamers from the doers. I served dessert and watched from the kitchen as he launched into his pitch. It was sophisticated in its simplicity. He wasn't selling them a specific investment. He was selling them access to insider opportunities through his private equity network. All they had to do was commit funds to a pooled investment vehicle, minimum buy-in of $50,000, and he'd leverage his connections to secure returns of 30–40% annually. It was completely fraudulent. There was no private equity network. There were no connections. There was just Marcus, collecting money that would disappear into his personal accounts and his lifestyle expenses. I watched 3 people commit on the spot, writing checks at my dining room table. $50,000 each, $150,000, handed over on nothing but Marcus's word and the illusion of luxury created by my stolen property. That night, I didn't sleep. I compiled everything into a comprehensive file. Patricia's preliminary findings, screenshots from Marcus's laptop, photos of the checks being written, a detailed timeline of his movements and statements, audio recordings from my home security system, which Marcus hadn't known existed. By 3 a.m., I had a prosecutable case, but I wasn't ready to pull the trigger. Not yet, because I'd learned something else from those 40 years hunting criminals. Sometimes the worst punishment isn't prison. Sometimes it's exposure. Complete, public, undeniable exposure. I opened a new document and began to write. Not a criminal complaint. A script. The transformation intensive continued for 5 more days. Each day, Marcus pushed his students harder, his pitches more aggressive, his promises more outlandish. Each day, I played the subservient host, cooking their meals, cleaning their messes, invisible in my own home. Each day, I collected more evidence. On day 6, Marcus made a crucial mistake. He held a late-night session in the great room, just him and his inner circle. 8 people who'd paid extra for private mentorship. I was supposedly asleep. Instead, I sat in my office with the door cracked, recording every word through my security system. He told them the truth, or at least a version of it. The investments he'd been pitching weren't real. They were placeholders for future opportunities. The money they'd committed would be used to build the infrastructure for his business. In other words, their investments were funding his lifestyle, not any actual venture. One man, older and wiser than the others, started asking hard questions. Marcus laughed, that easy charm snapping into place. Jerry, this is how wealth is built, my friend. The people who win are the people who trust the process. The people who hesitate, they stay broke. Now, are you all in or are you out? The implied threat was clear. Commit fully or be excluded from the inner circle. Jerry, faced with social pressure and the sunk cost of the $25,000 he'd already paid, backed down. I had him. Every word on tape. But I still waited. On day 8, Linda came to my office in tears. Dad, I went through some of Marcus's papers. I shouldn't have, but I did. He's using Mom's name. He's telling people she left him seed money for his business, that she believed in him. Dad, she never gave him anything except small gifts. He's using her memory to legitimize himself. The cold anger I'd been containing turned to ice. This was beyond theft. This was desecration. I know, sweetheart, I said quietly. I've known since day 2. Her eyes went wide. Then why haven't you thrown him out? Because throwing him out solves nothing. He'll just do this to someone else. But what I'm building, this will end him. Completely. Permanently. I showed her my files. All of it. The financial crimes. The fraudulent pitches. The chain of stolen properties. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. I helped him do this, she whispered. I'm an accessory. No, I said firmly. You were lied to. There's a difference. But Linda, I need you to make a choice now. Are you with him, or are you with me? She didn't hesitate. You, Dad, always you. Good. Because I'm going to need your help, and it won't be easy. The climax came on day 13, exactly as I'd planned. Marcus had scheduled his graduation ceremony, the final session where he'd push for maximum commitments and take his triumph lap. The entire group was assembled in the great room, dressed in their best, ready to celebrate their transformation. I'd spent the morning preparing. Not food, evidence. I'd compiled everything into a single presentation file, clean and undeniable. I'd connected my laptop to the great room's large television, the one Marcus had been using for his sessions. I'd sent a courtesy email to the FBI field office in Denver, with all my evidence attached and a note. Subject will be detained at this location until contacted by authorities. At 7 p.m., as Marcus stood before his students with his arms spread wide, ready to begin his final pitch, I walked into the great room carrying a remote control. Excuse me, I said quietly. I need to borrow the screen for a moment. Marcus turned, his expression flickering from surprise to annoyance. Tom, not now. We're in the middle of something important. I know, I said. That's why this can't wait. I pointed the remote at the television and clicked. The title across the top read, "The Marcus Webb Fraud, a Complete Investigation." The room went silent. "What the hell is this?" Marcus demanded, his voice rising. "It's the truth," I said calmly. "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Thomas Morrison. I'm a retired FBI financial crimes investigator. This lodge belongs to me. My late wife and I built it with our retirement savings. Marcus Webb is my stepson, and he has been using my property without permission to defraud you." I clicked to the next slide. Financial records appeared. Wire transfers. Fake bank statements. The shell company structures. Marcus has collected approximately $625,000 from the 25 of you through his transformation intensive program. Of that money, $0 has been invested in any legitimate vehicle. Instead, it's been used to fund his personal expenses, including the rental vehicles you arrived in, which he claimed were his, and the alcohol you've been drinking, which was stolen from my wine cellar. Click. The slide showed his laptop screenshots, the folder labeled Future Properties, the note about me being an old man who wouldn't push back. Additionally, Marcus has solicited investment commitments totaling $450,000 under false pretenses. There is no private equity network. There are no insider opportunities. There is only wire fraud, which is a federal crime. The room erupted. Shouts of denial from Marcus, gasps and cries from his students. Linda stood in the corner, her face a mask of grim satisfaction. "You can't prove any of this," Marcus shouted, his face red. "This is slander. I'll sue you." "You won't," I said, and clicked to the final slide. It showed 2 email addresses, one for FBI agent Patricia Chen, one for Colorado State Security's Fraud Division, because in approximately 30 minutes, federal agents will arrive to take statements from everyone here. You've all been victims of a fraud, and they'll need your cooperation for the investigation. I looked at Marcus, this man who'd exploited his mother's love and his stepfather's home. "You have 2 choices, Marcus. Choice 1. You stay, talk to the FBI, and face federal wire fraud charges that carry up to 20 years in prison. Choice 2. You leave right now. You wire back every dollar you've collected from these people within 48 hours, and you sign a document I've prepared admitting to fraud and agreeing never to contact any of us again. If you choose option 2, I won't press charges for trespassing and theft, and I'll tell the FBI you weren't worth their time." His face had gone from red to white. "You're bluffing, am I?" I said. "I spent 40 years building cases that sent men smarter than you to federal prison. Do you really think I'm bluffing?" The silence that followed was absolute. I could see his mind working, calculating odds, looking for an escape. There wasn't one. I'd closed every door. "Tick-tock, Marcus. Agent Chen is 45 minutes out. Make your choice." He looked at his students, these people he'd lied to, who were now looking at him with a mixture of horror and rage. He looked at Linda, who stared back with cold disappointment. He looked at me, and for the first time in 15 years, I saw him see me. Not as an obstacle, or a wallet, or a soft old man, but as exactly what I was. Someone who knew how to hunt. "I need an hour to pack," he said, his voice hollow. "You have 30 minutes, I said. "And you're not taking anything that isn't yours. That includes the electronics you use to film here. Those stay as evidence." He left the room without another word, his empire crumbling with every step. His students began to gather around me, questions pouring out, anger and relief mixing together. I answered what I could and told them Agent Chen would help them with the rest. Linda found me on the deck an hour later. The convoy was gone, fled down the mountain like roaches when the lights come on. Marcus had signed my document, his hand shaking so badly the signature was barely legible. He'd left in his Range Rover alone, abandoned by the people he'd thought were his team. "I'm sorry, Dad," Linda said quietly. "I should have known. I should have seen it." "He fooled your mother for 38 years, I said. "Don't feel bad that he fooled you for 2 weeks. We stood in silence, watching the sun set behind the maroon bells, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of orange and gold. "Is it really over?" she asked. "For us, yes. For him? I shrugged. That depends on whether he's smart enough to stay gone. But I don't think he is. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Got your email. Well done. We'll handle it from here. I looked at my lodge. This place of broken peace and stolen time. It would take days to clean, weeks to feel like mine again. But it would be mine. Sarah's dream, and my sanctuary, finally protected. Come on, I said to Linda. Help me take the furniture back where it belongs. We worked in comfortable silence, two people rebuilding what had been torn down, knowing that some things, once broken, become stronger at the seams. The lodge wasn't just a building anymore. It was a fortress, and I was done letting anyone breach the walls. 3 months later, Marcus was arrested in Nevada, running the same scheme with a new group of victims. Agent Chen called me personally to let me know. You were right, she said. He wasn't smart enough to stay gone. No, I agreed. He never was. I hung up the phone and walked out onto my deck. The winter snow had come, blanketing everything in white silence. Inside, Linda was making dinner. She'd been staying with me off and on, helping me adjust to the quiet, sharing the burden of grief and the comfort of family. Real family. The hawk I'd watched that first morning circled overhead again, still hunting, still patient. I understood it better now. Patience wasn't weakness. Silence wasn't surrender. Sometimes the strongest response to chaos wasn't noise, but the quiet, methodical work of building an airtight case. I went inside, closed the door against the cold, and sat down to dinner with my daughter. And for the first time since Sarah passed, I felt something close to peace. Not because the fight was over, but because I'd won it on my terms. With intelligence, not anger. With evidence, not emotion. With the slow, deliberate patience of a man who knew that justice, when properly served, is a dish that doesn't need to be rushed. That's the lesson I wish I could tell you. That revenge isn't about the moment of confrontation. It's about the months of preparation that make that moment inevitable. It's about knowing your enemy better than they know themselves. It's about staying calm when they want you to rage, staying silent when they want you to argue, and staying focused when they want you to give up. Marcus thought he was exploiting an old man's grief and property. What he was actually doing was walking into a trap built by someone who'd spent a lifetime learning how to spring them. And that's the difference between a con artist and an investigator. The con sells you a dream. The investigator shows you the receipts. If you're facing someone who thinks they can take advantage of your kindness, your grief, or your silence, remember this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them think they're winning. Let them get comfortable. Let them get arrogant. Let them hang themselves with their own rope. And when the moment comes, don't be cruel. Don't gloat. Just present the facts, offer the choice, and let consequences do the rest. That's not revenge. That's justice. And justice, unlike revenge, doesn't keep you up at night.